that is API portfolio management, as an integrated product suite. So essentially, you're ensuring consistency, you're also ensuring scalability, security, and alignment with business goals. An example could simply be my value proposition for a set of APIs is accept payments. This accept payments, under this, I have the different types of accepting methodologies for accepting payments that or features that I have as Tochii payments. Under this, I also have a reconciliation APIs or a set of reconciliation APIs. I also have refund APIs. I also have um, uh, settlement APIs, escrow APIs. All of these APIs I've built with one concept in mind, building a portfolio that enables a business that wants to integrate to Tochii APIs to accept payments. Because I know that they need to settle their payments. I know that they need to reconcile their payments. I know that they need to, in any case, if they need to refund payments, right? I know that they need to basically be able to have a plethora of different payment methods in order to excite their users or give their users sort of like just a wide range of options, really. And so that's one part of API portfolio management. Now, once I've created that consistency, there is more work to be done. Now, the work there is making sure that that is scalable, making sure that it is secure, and making sure that it is aligned with the business goals. So, as organizations continually increase adoption for digital transformation strategies, most times you realize that they manage different APIs and across different business units, products, and partners, which simply makes this concept more effective. And so there are various key aspects of API portfolio management, and we should talk about them one after the other. Number one, strategic alignment. With strategic alignment, APIs within a portfolio should align with the company's broader business goals and objectives. Now, this is a common concept that I've sort of been driving, right, with every lesson on APIs to say, look, APIs need to align with your business goals. If they are not aligned with your business goals, no matter what the value proposition is, the business can simply just say, well, we don't need these APIs because it's not aligned with the business goals or objectives. So we always start with that strategic alignment. How are we aligned with the business goals? You need to also ensure that each API has a clear business case, whether it's to drive revenue, it's to improve operational efficiency, or to enable innovation, whatever that business case is, it needs to be clear for each API. We need to also identify and manage synergies between APIs to maximize value. So, for example, you need to combine API data to create new products or services based off of common concepts that you have noticed in the market. So, there's an adoption of, say, a certain type of payment method like pay by link, right? Now, since that concept has been adopted so much, you can't say, you know what, let's make sure that this process is properly optimized. And this is probably like the first option that we give to our users because we see there's a growing trend towards pay by link, right? So it's really about maximizing that value based off of what the user needs are. The next point is on API governance. And a common concept in API governance is really to keep users or keep internal or external users from doing what they should not be doing. So essentially, you're establishing guidelines, standards, policies for design development, deployment, and operations of your APIs, right? So you want to ensure consistency across APIs, including things like your naming conventions, your security protocols, and versioning practices. So you don't want to use one name multiple times. You don't want to use different security protocols in between the same API stack. You don't want to use different versioning strategies between the same API stack. It just leads to confusion, and that's where governance comes into place. So you need to set up governance structures to control access, manage approvals, and monitor performance in order for you to be optimal. The next point in portfolio management is to categorize your APIs. Now, you have various types of APIs. That is your public APIs, your private APIs, and your partner APIs. Now, public APIs made available to external developers and partners to drive innovation, ecosystem growth, or external integrations. You need to categorize them specifically. Whether those private APIs are internally used between the organization to streamline operations or enable collaboration between two teams, you need to categorize that differently. Partner APIs that are exposed to specific partners based off of the relationships. You can have unique relationships with different businesses, and those APIs are just between these two companies. That's also okay, but needs to be categorized properly. Another component here is the API lifecycle management. To describe this a bit more, you need to sort of oversee the entire API lifecycle of each API in the portfolio to manage that portfolio properly. You need to ensure that the APIs are effectively planned, they are developed properly, they are deployed properly, they are managed properly, and they are also retired properly in that portfolio and not as individual APIs. You need to coordinate versioning and updates across the API portfolio, ensuring that backwards compatibility and minimizing disruptions to users. Now, when we talk about backwards compatibility, there is a common concept that I like to use. For example, have you ever noticed that the Apple iPhone, whenever they release a new OS, they simply say things like, this OS is available for iPhone 11, iPhone 12, iPhone 13, and so have you. Every other thing from iPhone X downwards is not compatible. This is the common concept of backward compatibility. Although it's a bit unique, but really, like, that's really the concept. Can this fit with what I currently have? Really. And so ensuring that backwards compatibility is important because whenever you make breaking changes with your APIs, you need to version that APIs. You need to version that API because backward compatibility is not possible there because you're making a breaking change. And I'll give examples of breaking changes in a minute. You need to prioritize API development and evolution based off of user feedback, business needs, and market trends for that API portfolio. Another component of your API portfolio management is your API standardization. Now, you need to define and enforce standard design patterns. Standard design patterns such as RESTful principles, GraphQL, gRPC, SOAP, whatever open API, whatever that concept is, you want to standardize it and you need to enforce it to ensure consistency across APIs. So if you're using open API, please do not use other types of APIs. You need to ensure that consistency straight away, or sorry, along the same portfolio, right? You need to use common data models, error handling mechanisms, and logging standards to simplify integration and improve user experience. Because if it's not common, then the ability for someone that is probably new to understand what you're sort of talking about is really dire, and it can really throw developers off. And in that situation, you really lose users. You need to implement API versioning strategies to manage changes without disrupting existing users or breaking integrations. Another component here is security and compliance for portfolio management. We need to apply consistent security measures across the API portfolio, such as authentication, right? Different types of authentication tools are API keys, OAuth, JWT, which is the JSON Web Token, and authorizations policies. You need to have regular audits on APIs for vulnerabilities and ensure that you comply with industry standards and legal regulations. Examples of industry standards are GDPR laws, HIPAA laws, PCI DSS for cards, called card management, 3DS, I believe that's another concept there. So really, like, you need to just be compliant with things of this nature. I think 3DS is for tokenization. Um, and the next one is you need to implement centralized security controls and enforce rate limiting. Rate limiting, throttling, data protection policies, whatever you need to make sure that these are up and running. To drive this home, we have more components in this portfolio management. In order for you to create these API portfolios, you need to make sure that your developer experience and support is optimal. So you need to essentially provide developers with, whether those developers are internal, external, or partners, we need to give them a unified high quality experience when they're using your APIs or Tochii APIs, right? Um, you need to maintain a centralized developer portal that offers comprehensive API documentation, usage guides, SDKs, and testing environments. You need to also provide APIs that sort of have sandbox environments with clear, consistent documentation across the portfolio to, to basically streamline your onboarding process and your development process. One key concept here that I really think that is really important is the developer community, where you have support forums or a support channel, a forum where innovation can be fostered, where you have regular updates on your APIs to engage and retain your users, that is the developers. This sometimes can be overlooked, and this is sort of why a lot of companies win and other companies do not necessarily win when it comes to the developer experience of API products. Other component of API portfolio management is scalability and performance. You need to ensure that APIs across the portfolio can handle increasing demand by implementing auto scaling. So I did mention something in previous lessons where I said auto scaling, things of that nature, load balancing, managing redundancies, because when you can scale the usage of, say, a backend service, no matter how many API calls, you reduce the level of performance is maintained at a certain standard. And what that does is that it excites your users. I mean, they wouldn't know, but then it will really just keep them in that place of things are working as they should, as opposed to a situation where there is no auto scaling, performance is degrading because there's more users, and it just puts your entire API portfolio in a situation where you can't grow more than what you currently have, right? So you need to optimize the performance of your APIs by reducing latency and improving response times. You need to regularly review API infrastructure and adjust your resources based on usage patterns. Usage patterns are super important because of you can simply pick them up with your monitoring and you want to ensure reliable service delivery in this entire process for your API portfolio management. Versioning and deprecation management. Versioning and deprecation management is utmostly really important in whether you're handling simple APIs, that is individual APIs, or you're handling API portfolios. In API portfolio management, you need to coordinate versioning across the portfolio to ensure smooth transitions and compatibility across the different APIs. You need to communicate API deprecation efforts effectively, provide the clear timelines of when those APIs will be retired, and migration guides to avoid any type of disruption. You need to maintain older versions of APIs where it is necessary, whilst you are encouraging the users to migrate to the newer version for more efficient versions. You need to also handhold them, and in some cases, you might need to help also um, really just help them integrate to the new service. So pretty much the importance of these key components really takes us from, well, this is important, but how do we manage these key aspects of these, and how do we sort of take this on board? So other key aspect of this is, as I did mention, is versioning and deprecation, which I've spoken about extensively. But more importantly, when we talk about reporting and analytics, I've mentioned this a number of times. If you don't know a pattern as to how an API is being used, or a set of APIs, and in this case, a portfolio of APIs are being used, you can't really say what's wrong with it. And that's why driving this point is super important. So you need to implement analytics and monitoring tools to track the performance, the health of all APIs within a portfolio. You need to collect insights into user behaviors, traffic patterns, error rates to identify optimization opportunities and ensure high availability. You need to use API usage data to measure the success of individual APIs, identify high value APIs, and make decisions about feature updates or retirements. Finally, you need to monitor API revenue streams. And this is in the case that if it is being monitored, if it is being monetized, because I've spoken about freemium service and a pay as you use. So in a case where you're monetizing this, you need to evaluate the impact of the APIs on the business.